Hello again, welcome back. Now I'm going to look at Dragonslayer, the fantasy. Okay, we are here. It's just been re-released in 4K. So that's the box, and here's the back of it. It's another gorgeous thing. And also, it's a steelbook. I got a special edition because here you go. It's gorgeous looking, isn't it? And we have the dragon's eye. It's very shiny. I'm not sure you can tell, but these do shine up if you get the lights right. I can't help but look at this. It's so gorgeous looking. Now, the film itself is wonderful, but very underrated. It's one of those films that Disney did in the early 80s after Star Wars came out and they wanted to compete. So they would do like dark fantasies with people who were friends with George Lucas. So you got this one because Matthew Robbins and Hal Barwood, who wrote it and produced and directed it, were friends with Lucas in film school, and they had written for Spielberg for Sugarland Express. So they were in that group of people. Then after that, Walter Murch did Return to Oz, where George Lucas was also like a producer on it or something. And both these films came out and were bombs, complete bombs, or too dark, and they were told, "You scared the children." Well, that's what children are for. I mean, come on. So they scared the children, and the films were basically shelved, and you'd see them on TV sometimes, but they weren't never like highly rated. That the reviews were always, yeah, it's okay. There's some nice fantasy bits, but it's too damn dark. And how could you show this to children? Who's the audience for it? And blah 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 blah. Well, I was the audience for it. So eventually they would get released like on DVDs, way down the line. But again, they were like DVDs with nothing on them, just the film. And I was like, well, that's the best you can get. We did our slight remaster, and that's it. Like, we just looked at it and transferred it over, probably. And so there was no love given for these films, which is a real shame because they're far more imaginative than a lot of stuff that Disney were doing at the time. But they were not what the audiences wanted. Now, the thing is, the Dragonslayer, all the people who did Dragonslayer went on to do Jurassic Park. All the R&D in Dragonslayer led, how they did the Dragonslayer, pretty much how they did a lot of the stuff in Jurassic Park, but much more defined and like 10 years later. They did so much of the same stuff. Instead of go motion, they had CGI, but it's pretty much the same process for the T-Rex attack and everything else is what they did here. Like, so much of this was R&D for Jurassic Park. And Jurassic Park was also fairly dark in a lot of scenes too, if you remember. So this was actually that they filmed, it came in between a bunch of other films and was needed to help start the revolution, digital revolution, and how you combine physical and digital and physical and models and things. And it came out just after Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back had been made, and we're going to do Raiders of the Lost Ark. But the Raiders of the Lost Ark was not a big a deal with Star Wars for special effects, for like optical effects. But they did this film that Paramount and Disney were making, that because they were made by friends of George Lucas, it was like, well, why don't you do this with ILM as well? So a lot of people at ILM were doing Dragonslayer and Raiders at the same time. Raiders was much less intensive for doing Dragonslayer. So this is the film that made at the same time as Raiders of the Lost Ark by one of the same studios, Paramount. So, and it came out about 2 weeks before Raiders and did nothing. And Raiders came out and made all the money. So as far as I'm concerned, Raiders made the money and paid for this film quite happily. And Spielberg got the benefits 10 years later. So the film itself is something that would really not come into effect until the late 90s again, in the sense of doing a serious fantasy land. I mean, George Lucas tried with Willow, but Willow's not as good as this at Dragonslayer, and it's not as good as what came out later. When later we got Lord of the Rings, which has the same approach as this film does. Maybe there's less dark scenes in Lord of the Rings, but the seriousness and the sense of a world that has dragons, that has fantasy creatures, that is dangerous, that was all very much inspired by this, which itself was inspired by Arthurian legends, legends of the past. But this was the first one to really do it right. Now, Excalibur had come out about a year or two before, had done Arthurian legends right, but they didn't have dragons or anything. It was actually pretty much, there was fantastical elements, but there was no dragons. So this film was kind of like one of those films that did not do that well. That was actually very influential. So that's definitely worth something to start with. He also had an influence in this one in 13th Warrior, which is a John McTiernan film based on Michael Crichton's novel Eaters of the Dead, which had the Beowulf legend, but did not have a dragon, but it had a lot of the feeling of this film. I mean, 13th Warrior was a Disney film as well, and it also lost a lot of money. So it's laughing at my door. So that's all of the background to this one. This one came in, was made, they thought it was going to make a lot of money, it didn't. A year or two later, Conan came out and made a lot of money. And the genre became a lot sillier after that, where you got the Schwarzenegger Conan sequel and Red Sonja, and everything looked really silly. But this was the start of the big fantasy boom. And it didn't really pay off because a lot of these films came out like Krull and they didn't really deliver what people wanted. Because they've all competed with Star Wars and they couldn't be Star Wars. Because everyone did fantasy because Star Wars was science fiction fantasy. So they thought, we can do all sci-fi, but do some fantasy as well to rip off Star Wars, but they never quite understood Star Wars. So the film is actually about this sorcerer's apprentice. So there's a Disney connection. Who his master, this old ancient sorcerer, who's played by Ralph Richardson, who's pretty much at the end of his life, and they're visited by these poor people who have a dragon who oppresses them, and there's a lottery to find out twice a year a virgin is sacrificed to the dragon. So that means it will not attack them. They do this twice a year. Now, these villagers always come the villagers who have to give away their young women. The rich people never do. So they're getting sick of this. So they go to the sorcerer and say, can you come and help me kill this bloody dragon? Not these exact words, but that's the idea. And they actually have the king's men trying to stop them because they don't. The king is a coward and does not want to rock the boat in any way. He just wants to survive. He knows the dragon's old, he's going to die. So he's just trying to last it out using the poor. So they asked the old sorcerer wizard guy. He dies, and his apprentice decides to take on the challenge. So the apprentice travels with them to the village and to try and go to the dragon's lair and actually try and destroy it. What he does, he crumbles the top bit down onto the dragon, and there's nowhere to escape from, it seems, using one of his spells. Of course, that would be a very short film if that was just a film. So what happens is the dragon obviously escapes, finds a way out, attacks, destroys so many people, and the king is not very happy. And even before the dragon escapes, he's already arresting this apprentice, saying, why did you do this? Why did you come here? It's like, we're just going to wait it out. Why are you doing this? No one can survive against the dragon. It's too vicious. So we're just going to try and wait it out. So they chuck him in jail. Then the dragon attacks. He escapes and realizes he actually has to do the job properly. He has to actually see what he's got and actually go and kill the dragon face to face rather than try to do a trick and have stuff falling. He has to find a way to actually kill it. And that's the second half of the movie, is him trying to find a way to use some special steel he's got this little locket which he can use to try and power the spear to try and kill the dragon, make it extra strong. And he has to go in and try and kill it. Go into the cave and try and kill it. And that's like what the conclusion of the film's about. And lots of things happen. You know, someone who should have been dead appears again, which will not be a surprise to anybody in the film. And you have a wonderful movie. Really, it is just gorgeous. I don't want to. I mean, I said about someone coming back because it's obvious from the start this person's coming back. But everything else is. I'm not going to say anything about it. Just like so, it's basically two halves. The first half is the young man on a quest. The second half is him having to deal with actually go through the quest properly, not doing shortcuts. And there's just a lot of atmosphere. It's the end of an era of dragons and wizards and Christianity's coming in. Ian McDiarmid, Emperor Palpatine himself, is in this as a local priest who gets burnt alive to the dragon, which is a very tasty image. It's kind of funny. I'm pretty sure this is why he was cast as Palpatine, because George Lucas was pals with the people making this film, and his film company was actually doing effects. So he'd have, that's a good actor. I have to remember him. I'm pretty sure he got the job just because Lucas noticed something like, he looks about right from this guy I'm trying to cast. Peter McNichol plays the Dragonslayer, the title. He's terrific. He's American, but he doesn't sound too American. Every so often an accent comes and goes, but generally it's fine. The leading lady's good. She died not long after, unfortunately, or she died about 10, 15 years after this film. So she never really had a career she deserved, but she's really good in this. Initially, you're meant to think she's a boy, but you can tell straight away she's a woman. And they don't even try and hide it for too long. It's just part of the thing is her father had her as a boy, so she didn't have to go into the lottery. And there's lots of stuff between them, is her trying to get him to do the right thing, but also starting to care for him and trying to help him. So it's quite a good relationship because she obviously falls for him, but she doesn't get away with guff either. She tells him when he's full of it. So there's lots of nice stuff there. Ralph Fiennes's terrific as the wizard. There's a lot of nice supporting players, like British supporting actors, and the whole thing is wonderfully atmospheric. There's a lot of good technicians in the film industry who can work in this film, who know what they're doing, who can shoot a film, can design a film. It's very much a British film with two American stars. So maybe that's why the film didn't do that well, because it was so... Star Wars was an American film. It was shot in Britain and the Middle East, but it was an American film in tone and attitude. This film, even though it was made by Americans, had the soul of a British film with a budget. It revered the British stories and wanted to actually suggest old British myth. So it never really did the transformation to something that would make the Americans happy. So that's probably why it was a bit of a flop, really. I just don't think the American sensibility was ready for this film. It just was too engaged within a faster pace. This film takes its time. There's a lot of traveling scenes, and they take their time to get from A to B, so you can get character scenes, and you can get moments, and you can get different elements that actually are important to the story. And so it's just an older style of filmmaking. I just think that was just inherent in the story. So it does have something that, for the impatient, may be annoying, but if you like good stories, you're going to love it. I mean, I watched it in my projector, so I could see the big screen finally, and it looks really good. The dragon, as you can see behind me, looks really good. They used Go Motion. This was Phil Tippett's big project after Empire Strikes Back, when he was really getting to know how to do his craft. So this is something to behold. The dragon in this film is so good, and just the cinematography, the atmosphere of the film, it's all great. It's really lots of darks, lots of sense of foreboding within the landscapes. There's a real sense of there's nowhere to run, really, from this dragon. The dragon can go anywhere, and you're a small person compared to everyone else, compared to the dragon. Like, if it wants you to kill you, it's going to kill you. And it also creates the idea of why did all these plot things of the lottery happens, because they're terrified of this bloody dragon. The dragon's terrifying, so it makes utter sense of why they're doing what they're doing. So it's a wonderful film. I highly recommend it. I got this one fairly cheap from America. Because it's 4K, it's region free. So if you've got a 4K player, it's an easy one to get. So I would recommend it if you like fantasy films that have a realistic base. And if you want to see the film that actually set the base for fantasy films, it and Excalibur, I think, both can set the base for fantasy films for the next 30, 40 years, in a sense of, like, if you want to do it realistically, if you want to do it with some passion, these are the films that have that. And you can tell the influence Lord of the Rings, which would influence all the other films. But these are the two, like this and Excalibur, the two that kind of really kind of solidified where the genre we're going to go. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon for another one, but that's me for now. Right, bye.